Good evening or afternoon or whatever time you're watching this, and welcome to On the Real Side. Um, I'm Bob Mover, and our guest today, I'm very happy to have one of the great alto saxophonists of our time or any time. Uh, Mr. Dick Oatts is here. Hey, Dick.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah. So,
Thanks
we.
for asking me on, man.
Oh, it's overdue, man. I've been meaning to for quite a while. Dick and I go back to probably around 1977 when you came to New York. Uh,
Right.
I remember the first time I heard you was at Sweet Basil, and you were playing in a band led by a trombone player who now lives in Germany, Jerry Tillitz.
Oh, Jerry Tellez.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I had done some gigs with Jerry Tillitz too, sometimes, and so I fell by Sweet Basil, which was kind of my. I had a steady gig there for a while, and that was one of the years I had it, and it was also my watering hole. And so I heard this really beautiful alto player, and it had been a while since I'd heard a really beautiful alto player, and it was Dick Oatts, who I'd never seen or heard of before, and we hit it off right away after the set. I think I walked over to you and told you I really enjoyed your playing, and asked him what mouthpiece he was playing, and he was playing this beautiful 95 over zero uh, Berg Larson alto mouthpiece. And in those days, we used to try each other's mouthpieces because we really didn't care about disease, I guess. I don't know, is that how we
Yeah,
were? I
that
mean,
was a while back.
yeah, that was why we figured if you'd smoke a joint with somebody, you could try his mouthpiece. And we didn't
True,
really
yeah.
do that that night, but I tried his mouthpiece and I played it, and then he snatched it right back from me. I said, "Oh, I like this mouthpiece." And you said, "I bet you do." And so that was an interesting evening, and we
Well,
became.
the reason I liked it so much, Bob, is it because it was a versatile mouthpiece for me at that time. I was doing so many different styles of alto playing, and I needed something that spoke through the lead in the section, and I needed also something that could play the different forms of music that I was into at that time. And it was pretty edgy. The mouthpiece was pretty bright and edgy, but it fit a lot of genres.
Well, it
Heck,
sounded good, and I liked it. I tend to play a darker mouthpiece than that, but to me, it reminded me of a Meyer without the extra edge. It was a little less
yeah,
edgy than a Meyer,
right.
but it was a little brighter than say a Brillhart. But
Yeah.
anyway, you sounded beautiful on it, and and I played it, and I liked the feeling of it too. And
Well,
so,
it turned out to be a lot bigger than I thought. When I was playing a gig with Bergonzi. We were on the road together and he said, "Oh, it sounds like you're struggling with that mouthpiece. And you're still getting the same sound that you hear, but it sounds like you're working twice as hard as you need to do to get the sound that you need." So I went to about I went to a guy over there. I can't remember his name, but
is this in Boston or
it was
with
in
Jerry?
Boston. Yeah. And I went there and Jerry and I tried about 30 bergs in front of him. And none of them seemed to fit at all. And then I said, he says, "Why don't you try this Brillhart 6-star tonal?" And
Mhm.
I said, "Yeah, I'm open to anything at this point." So I tried it and I put it on and it was immediate, like, boom. When you know, you know. It was like that instant. I
Yeah,
just, I can age gracefully with this mouthpiece instead of blowing my brains out and working so hard to control it, to keep it. I mean, I found my sound through that mouthpiece, but I found more of a sound through the ease of playing this Brillhart to me.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And you could still play all the kinds of ways because you were in a lot of different bands, and you were
Yeah,
still, and the Brillhart was still flexible enough to be able to do that, right?
right, right. And so
Yeah.
I just wanted to find something that I can grow into my next level of sound with.
Yeah,
And
I had a Brillhart story too, for a long time, where I was playing this Beechler mouthpiece was made by a Beechler who was a partner with Brillhart.
right, right, I remember that. Yeah.
And when we met, I was playing this, and I made a couple of records. The Xanadu records that I made were both on this Beechler. The trouble
Uh,
was it had a little bit of it would get sharp in the top, which was, I mean, I could live with it, but it wasn't. I don't know. I just felt like making a change, and I was about to go on the road with Walter Davis Jr. as
wow.
as a duo, and so I said I called my friend Ted Klum, and
Right.
Fred had been my student at Berkeley when I
Great
took
mouthpiece maker though.
great mouthpiece player and a fine saxophone player as well.
Yeah.
And Ted took me over to Bob Ackerman, and
Uh-huh.
he had these a couple of these Brillhart Great Neck originals, which were not quite the six that you have, but they're close enough. They're very close to that. And it
Right.
was that same feeling. I mean, I ended up there were two of them, and Ted took the one that was I thought his was even a little better than the one I took, but since he brought me there, he had that one, and I took the other one, and I played that mouthpiece for about 35 years.
Really?
Yeah,
35 years.
35 years, and lately, last year it started to. They tell me that the rails tend to get worn or something happens where it has to be refaced or re something. You know what I mean? I'm not the guy who knows all about mouthpieces, Charles McPherson. He can tell you everything that needs to be done on them and everything like that. But I'm not like that. But
Yeah.
anyway, rather than do that, Ted had made this new mouthpiece, which is called the Yardbird.
Oh,
It was a copy of the last mouthpiece that Charlie Parker played, which was actually a metal. When you see that metal one, I always had thought it was a metal link because it looked like it, but it wasn't. It was a metal Selmer made in England, and that's what Bird had played on that on the Bird with. In fact, the Bird with strings. Everybody thinks he was playing the White Brillhart, but it seems he was playing the last mouthpiece because from 1950 he played that on around that time.
really? I didn't
Yeah,
know
so he
that.
was playing this, and the metal one, Jesse Davis had been playing that, but he also switched to the rubber one, I think, because Ted decided to make it in rubber and metal, and
Uh,
so like I switched to this Brillhart, which I mean this Brillhart to the Ted Klum uh, Yardbird, what he calls the Yardbird mouthpiece, but I still it took me a minute, but the Brillhart. There's something about those Brillharts that's so warm and nice, and and you sound great with that. I remembered, you know, that was what you were playing too.
I just felt like that I could age gracefully with this kind of a setup instead of uh being a prisoner of the mouthpiece. I could find my sound more with this setup.
Yeah,
Which
that's the
me
that's the
to
thing. Now, if I could just find the reeds, it's like
well, what breeds are you using, Bob?
well, I've played the Voss medium hard forever, and then I went to oh, what's it called? It begins with M. The ones everybody uses. I like them too. What's it called? I've tried everything. Like Ted says that um, the blue box Van Dorens work on this mouthpiece, but they seem to be too soft. And then I tried Hemke, and then
I
I
use I use Rico Royal 3.5. And so what I do with reeds is I wear them down to where they're really soft and then they turn green. And
uh
then
and then you
when they
clip them.
turn when they turn green, I say, wow. So no matter what reed I put on after that, it feels great. So I've been doing that for years. I've been just like wearing them down to where they can hardly buzz at all, where they hardly have any buzz left in them. And then no matter what I put on after that, it's like, wow, you
That's
know.
that's a good idea. Well, I had one. I mean, I had something. I had a medium. I put on a medium soft Lavas because I got these extra ones. Ted sent me a whole bunch of reeds that he wasn't using, so I tried all these different ones. And what is the one that begins with M? It's it's they're very famous reeds. And I had
Oh,
a box of them. Oh,
him.
because I had the Jazz Selects for a while, and there was
Bob, I've only used pretty much one reed, and that's been Rico.
mm,
Rico, 3.5. The numbers change because I want different vibrations. I've always wanted different hits, diaphragm hits, like especially with the bebop that we love. I wanted it to come from more of my diaphragm, my tonguing. I didn't want it to come from my tongue only. I wanted it to come from more the punch from the diaphragm. And so that was my main thing. I remember like I had to do a lot of different styles of music uh, when I came to New York, and I felt like this is the most flexible for me, where I could Punch and Judy some of the swing stuff, some of the triplet stuff. You know, if I was wanted to, if I was going through a cannonball phase, if I was going through a stit phase, I could ease up and I could find the right mixture of the reed I needed to buzz for that kind of music.
yeah.
So
See, that's you and I were different that way, and I always respected what you did that way. That you had that kind of flexibility to like play in a big band and to play with different kinds of bands and all this. I only played one way always, and it was my own.
but
Except when I was a kid, I tried to
that,
play like Bird.
that's the thing. It was your own.
Exactly, you know what I
That's
mean. But I
what we
mean,
all love about you.
I didn't know how to play any other way. And so whatever I did was like, I mean, it wasn't exactly 100% mine. I was like everybody else. I was trying to be Charlie Parker and failing, and so I became me. But it's but
Yeah,
it was just that musical situations that were demanded of me. I mean, I went from Mingus to Chet Baker, which was a pretty big switch, but
right.
but it wasn't any way I had to play the horn any differently, except
Mhm,
maybe with Mingus a little louder.
right.
But there was like no where you've done so many diverse things, man. You've like been in orchestras conducted by Gunther Schuller. You've played behind vocalists like Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, and Sarah Vaughan, which is a whole different way of playing the horn that you have to do than if you're just standing in front of a quartet. So
Yeah.
and the beautiful thing about you is that you've retained this individuality. When you play, I can tell you in 2 or 3 notes that it's you, and you've retained all that stuff, and plus you have the stylistic flexibility to go from various types of playing that's needed. So
I was put in a situation where I had to make a living. And for me, I had 4 kids and I had to make sure that I could bring them up. So I had to be able to teach, I had to be able to play flexible. You know, I I was even working with I was doing pop gigs, I was doing like Luther Vandross, I was doing uh this group called Flim the BBs. I was doing all kinds of like Eddie Gomez gigs.
yeah, well,
So
you were ubiquitous. You were in so many situations. That's
but
true.
yeah, I felt like a jack of all trades and a master of none. But then when I look at you, I felt like, wow, I need to get into more of Bob Mover, But that's what I realized coming to New York. I wouldn't have realized uh, just how thin I spread myself to so many different situations. I remember coming in, I thought, well, maybe I'll do the studio thing, maybe I'll do that, maybe I'll, and then when I started to read some of that music, I just said, man, these guys are all synthesizer players writing this stuff, and it wasn't worth the effort to learn how to play the clarinet and the flute when the music was written so poorly like that.
Oh, that's interesting
Yeah.
that you felt that. But you do play clarinet and flute, or did you? I mean, you do play some of that, right? Because you.
I did in the past, but then when I realized that, the music that was written for the flute or the clarinet was substandard. I just didn't want to make a living playing music that wasn't really written by great writers, you know. Like when I played something like by a Michael Abeni or a Thad Jones or a Jerry Dodgen or a Jim McNeely or uh I'm going like, wow, this is so beautiful. Especially, coming out of Thad's music, I got really spoiled. And I thought that if it didn't hit that par of what I was searching for, I didn't want to play it. I just didn't want to get involved in it. I wanted to say, I'll just
I
write
want to
my
tell people you had 35 years basically with the what was first that and Mel. You caught the tail of when they were co-leading, right?
yeah,
And
I
then the
got the
Mel Lewis
tail
band,
the
and then the
tail
Vanguard
end, I got
Jazz
the
Orchestra.
tail end. I joined in 1977, and now I've been with them for what, 47 years? And it's been the best thing in the world for me to be able to experience playing lead that long in a band. I never thought I would stay that long, but when Thad left the band, I said, well, why would I want to leave playing with a guy like Mel Lewis, who swang his ass off, and the bass player was like Rufus Reed and Ray Drummond, and was just a swinging ass rhythm section. Why would I want to leave that? And when, you know, I got to play with guys like Dennis Irwin every week or a Joe Lovano, I said, man, I'm going to play this music until it's done.
Yeah,
And
well, I mean that, and you sure did and do. I actually before you came to New York, I played a couple of gigs with Mel, and Mel had actually asked me to. He said, "Would you like to join the band?" Because there was Jerry, and they were going through different lead alto players and everything. And it was the only time I regretted two things. One is that I'm a bad reader, sight reader. The second is
uh,
that I don't double. And it was the only time I ever said I wish that I doubled. It was the only band that I really would have joined. And because
but then we wouldn't have had Bob Mover.
yeah, well, then we yeah, and Dick Oatts is also we have you because you
That's
could
right.
do all that stuff. But I really don't sight read well, and I don't double. George Young, when I was a kid, took me around. He befriended me. He's a wonderful cat.
Oh yeah, I remember George. Yeah.
And George, I was 16. I met George, and he said, "Come on, I'll take you around to studio dates." He showed me what you got to do now. If you really want to be a serious professional musician, you got to learn to double, and you got to, play these gigs. And he brought me into like jingles that they were doing, and I met Danny Bank and all these wonderful people that were
Oh,
doing it.
Danny Bank was so amazing.
Right, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And
he was great.
and I took a few lessons with Danny too, because he was a great teacher. But
Yeah, that's true. I remember Danny being a great teacher.
but
Yeah.
one thing I noticed was the studio musicians, as beautiful as they were, their conversations were a lot about their boats and their picnic on Sunday, and this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And when you'd hang out with Al Cohn and Zoot Sims and the jazz musicians, they told each other ridiculous jokes, or they talked about music, and so was playing or something. It was a little more different, but
That's what I that's what I loved about that generation is that they talked more about music than they did the studios and all that stuff.
yeah, there was that. But you have had such a broad background that way, and you never lost your jazz feeling. In fact, your jazz feeling just got better and better. Not that it was ever not better, but it was beautiful. You know, uh, these talks we were talking about when we started out, we're talking about reeds and we're doing this. You know that classic joke about the IQ convention, and these two guys are talking, and one says, my IQ is 169, and the other guy says, oh, I'm 167. He says, well, what do you do? He says, well, I'm a brain surgeon. We're working on new techniques involving
Yeah.
cybernetics and brain surgery, and blah, blah, blah. What do you do? He says, well, I'm a nuclear physicist. Ah. So then these other two guys are talking. He says, well, what do you do? He says, well, my IQ is 120 and 25. What do you do? He says, well, I'm a CEO of a firm, and I'm doing this. What do you do? He says, oh, I'm a CEO of a gasoline, and we do this and that. And then there's two guys, and what's your IQ? And the guy says, I'm 95, and the other says, oh, I'm 93. What are you? He says, well, I have my own garage, and we work on cars and this and that. And the other guy says, yeah, well, I have a car wash myself, and I got a chain of them, and they're good. Then one guy says, what's your IQ? He says, well, my IQ is 42. And what are you? He says, well, I'm 39. He says, really? What kind of reeds do you play?
Oh. Look, oh, that's good. Oh, that's funny. That's good. Bob. I want to remember that.
So, Dick, your father, I mean, talking about that, I mean, was a very fine saxophone player. Even Frank Porowski told me that your dad was a terrific. Jack Oatts was a very fine saxophone player in Iowa, of all places. I don't mean of all places, but that's where you came into the world, in Iowa, right?
Yeah, but the thing about my father, he was in World War II, and he was in one of the service bands stationed in England, and he was there stationed there for about 2 years, and it was kind of a cover Glenn Miller band, and they played a lot of dances and stuff. And he, but his favorite player was Hodges,
Mm-hmm.
and so he took me to hear a Duke Ellington, Count Basie. You know when they did that record to you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so he took me to that thing, and it was both bands, Count Basie and Duke Ellington.
I mean, they were recording, or they were just.
They were just no, they weren't recording, but they were. It was a joint concert
Oh.
at the Iowa Arts Center in Des Moines, Iowa. And my father used to take me around all these bands so I could, because he knew that we were in the middle of nowhere, and so he wanted to inspire me. And so when I finally got to see Johnny Hodges, Duke Ellington, I went up. I just wanted an autograph from those guys. They were my like heroes. So I went up to these two guys at the bar, and they were so far away on the bandstand, I couldn't see who they were. But I went up to them. I said, "Would you guys sign this for me?" And I was like 8 years old, and he said, "Well, sure, son, I'll sign that for you. But what do you play?" I said, "I play the alto saxophone like my dad does." And he says, "Well, who's your dad listen to?" He says, "His favorite player is Johnny Hodges." And and Duke Ellington said, "Your father's a very wise man." Well, I'll never forget that story because that was like that was like the warm-heartedness that I grew up with my father. He loved Johnny Hodges. Everything that he played was like in his soul, in his whole fabric of his every time he played, he heard Johnny. And like I was saying, well, Dad, you think you should, check out some Bird maybe? Says, no, 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 no. That's that's not in my that's
Not,
not in my repertoire.
not in his wheelhouse. He was,
No,
yeah.
and I honored that because he he was raised with the kind of music that he was raised with. And I just realized how the unification of what we shared was so genuine and so beautiful. And so, like, I had a very loving father and had a very, my brother played trumpet in Kenton's band. And
Oh, really? Is he still around, your brother?
yeah, yeah, my brother's Jim Oates. My nephew uh, plays incredible alto. You'd love him, Bob.
Wow.
His name is Chris Oates.
And where's he living?
He's living in Philly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he plays his butt off, man. He just like, but he went to school at Temple, and we just like kind of like it's not like a dynasty, but it's like we just have a love and a passion for music that
It's
we
a
learn from,
lineage. It's a family
well,
lineage.
that we learn from guys like you, that we learn from guys like Dodgen. We learn from guys like, from Phil Woods or from all these great players that we've been blessed with.
Now, your dad must have had you playing. I mean, when did you start playing? In about 6 months or a year?
No, I started playing when I was about 7 or 8. He needed to he needed to figure out he needed to have a music program that sold his ideals. So he had me playing, you know, some serious, pretty much bassy, straight up bassy, and Duke Ellington, because that's the music that he was raised with.
So
So
he would play. How did he teach you? In others, like let's go through your evolution. You're 7 years old. Your dad gives you a saxophone.
it gives me, well, the thing was is that he said, I have this. We went out to Elkhart, Indiana to look for an alto.
Right.
And he said, okay, if you practice this really hard, I'll give you this alto by the end of the year. And so all I did was practice because I wanted that Selmer Mark 6 so bad. And it's funny because Bob, it's the same saxophone I'm playing now.
The same exact horn.
Same exact horn. Yeah.
Wow,
And so, I mean, I can't give it up because I got it from my father. It's just like
that's
the
so
love.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's just like as much there's a lot of other altos that can really speak differently, but I think it's just the love that I shared with him that makes me want to keep it, you know.
That's beautiful. How long did your dad? I assume he's not with us anymore.
He died in I think he was 86 when he died, but he influenced so many people around the state of Iowa. He was just like um, a Pied Piper out there because
Um,
he was one of the first guys that brought in like Arnie Lawrence, or he brought in Clark Terry. He
mhm.
brought in Marv Stam. He brought in all these great players from New York out to Podunk, Iowa. And he was just like,
Literally Podunk, Iowa.
yeah, it was like in the middle of nowhere. My hometown was like 4,000 people.
Yeah, a friend of mine used to say Podunk, Iowa, when he told jokes. It was like I went from Podunk, Iowa to Beaver Breath, Mexico. Beaver Breath, Wisconsin. That was his joke. We started out in Podunk. How was your tour? He said, "Yeah, it was good. We went from Podunk to Beaver Breath." And I went,
Well, I did a lot of gigs out there with people like that said I was in some band. I can't remember who the leader was, but he comes up to me and the first thing he says is, "Don't tell me you're the lead alto player." And I said, "Yeah, I am the lead alto player." He says, "Oh, it's going to be a fucking long night."
Really?
And I,
Why did he say that? Just looking at you?
just by looking at me, because he said, "You're too young to understand this stuff." And so I just shoved it up his ass the whole night on the gig. And that's kind of that was kind of like what, they just assumed that, oh, you're from Iowa, you don't know anything.
Where was this that this guy gave you that
I was
attitude?
in Sioux City,
In the city, New York City,
Sioux City, Iowa.
Sioux City, Iowa. Oh, I'm sorry, the big town.
Big town, yeah, Sioux City. And so like I just shoved it up his butt the whole night. And he came up to me after the gig and said, "Man, I am so sorry. I so misjudged you." And
I bet he did.
yeah, he did. And it's like I remember, like when I moved out to New York, it was the same kind of like I go into the kitchen and Mel was there in the kitchen. And he goes, "Who are you?" I go, "Oh, my name is Dick Oatts." And he goes, "Never heard of you. What do you think you're doing here?" I said, "Well, I want to play with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis tonight." He says, "Who says?" He says, "Who have you played with?" And I said, "Well, I played with some guys in Chicago. I played with a few people in Minneapolis, St. Paul." He says, "I don't know anybody from that town." I said, "How do I know I can trust you? Can you play?" I said, "Well, I can play a little." He says, "You can't play a little and play in this band. So what is it? Can you play or not?" Because you know, and then all of a sudden, Thad comes in and he says, "Are you Dick Oatts?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Dick Oatts." And he says, "You're Thad Jones." And I shook his hand. And he says, "Mel, this is the guy that's going to play tenor for us tonight." So I joined on tenor saxophone
Oh,
uh, because I was subbing for Larry Schneider.
I remember Larry. Sure.
Yeah, and Rich Perry was also the other tenor player that night.
And I think he still is a lot of the time.
Yep, yep, he's still there, and he's playing great.
He
Just
always did, man. He was always one of my favorites.
yeah, he's amazing. He has such a different voice, and I learned so much from Rich, and I learned so much from Billy Drews, to Joe Lovano. I learned so much from uh, Gary Smolian, especially Freebeck.
That band, just had the possibilities of education. It's all over that, and I'm sure they learned from you. You
Yeah.
guys were just, I mean, I remember that band. My dad and I used to go hear them on Mondays in 1968.
Oh, wow.
When you would hear Eddie Daniels and Joe Farrell, and
Right.
Sergeant and Jerome Richardson, and the
Yeah.
original incarnation of that band, and Brookmeyer, and it was wonderful. My dad was a big band musician too.
Oh,
He was
really?
a player, yeah, and
Oh,
his thing was he was more of a melody guy. Like he loved. Well, he worked with Tommy Dorsey and Charlie Spivak. He was a Charlie Spivak, Harry James type of style.
right.
When he played jazz, he loved Louis and Roy Eldridge, and he tried to play like Bill Harris, the trombone player. On
Oh, yeah.
He said he loved Bill Harris's time feeling, and he tried to play like that. He didn't know anything about chord changes really or anything, but he was a melody guy and he could play the blues and play simple songs. And he was in and out of music kind of all his life. But he was
Oh,
it,
it was, yeah. So
that's
he inspired you to stay in.
well, he inspired me, yeah. To He tried to discourage me. He was very bitter about music and felt that you
Oh,
had to be out of your mind to want to be a musician to stay in it. He did everything he could to tell me not to do it, but he
yeah.
saw it was hopeless, so he
Well,
learned
it's
to
funny
live
because
with it.
my father said, he said, you should go into education. I said, "I can't do education." He says, "Well, why not? It was good for me." I said, "Yeah, but you're a prisoner to it now." And I,
Mm.
s- I said, I need something different." to keep my enthusiasm up. And so he says, "Well, what do you think you're going to do?" So I moved up to Minneapolis in St. Paul, Twin Cities, and I stayed there for like 5 years. And
That's from what, the age of like 17 to 22 or something like that, or 18?
I was like I was yeah, pretty much 17 to 22. And I just I couldn't take I was going to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, and it was just it's something that my dad went to Drake. My brother was going to Drake. I said, I can't make this. I'm not that kind of a guy. I'm not that kind of a teacher, you know. And he says, "Well, what makes you think you can make it as a player?" And I said, "Well, why don't we just put your money where your mouth has been for the last 12 years teaching me and let me go try and play." So that's what I did. And that's what encouraged me because I wanted to learn how to make a living, not just uh, playing, club gigs and stuff like that, that weddings or stuff like shit like that. I just wanted to really try to find myself. And so I I moved up there in the first 5 years I was up there, I was making twice as much as he ever made as a teacher.
Really?
So he said, "I think you made a good decision." I said, "Yeah, thank you. I think I did too."
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was just that, and that's in Minnesota. That's in Minneapolis.
I was in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, and I met so many great players that were so giving and so sharing. And there's one cat named Ryan Gribna out there that really played great.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but
not
man,
really, but I knew one guy, and maybe you didn't know him because he might have been a little bit. He had his share of troubles, but he was in Miami for a while and was playing with Ira down there for a little while in the '60s, and he was as good a trumpet player as you might hear. I mean, he could hold his own with Ira,
wow.
and not many people could really do that. And he
Right.
was just a kid down there at the time. He was about in his early 20s, and I saw him years later. He sat in with me in Boston. For some reason, he was wandering around Boston, and he was trying to play flute, which he didn't play anywhere near as well as trumpet. Somehow he had stopped that. Billy Shield.
Well, Billy Shields, I remember that. I remember his name, Billy Shields. Yeah.
Billy Shields was a stone monster.
Wow.
And Billy, I got to know him. He was with this kind of band that was on the road. It was sort of like a Blood, Sweat, and Tears Chicago type of band, like rock with horns or what you wanted
Right.
to call it. And they spent some time in New York in the summer of '69 when I was hanging around as a as a
Billy
kid.
Shields. I haven't heard that name in so long.
And Billy Shields was a tremendous musician. He uh, he was really the first person to turn me on to Lee Konitz.
Oh,
It was like in the summer of I think '68. It might have been. He was up here and he had his wife and kids with him. He had that and he said you might be interested in this. And I remember he played me the Lover Man that Konitz had done with Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker, and I'd only heard a little bit of Lenny Tristano, but I never really listened to Lee. And that was something that got me curious. And he used to have the Hindemith book, the Paul Hindemith little tiny, like compact little book with
right, right.
the sightseeing. And he would pull it out and we'd ride the subway and we'd be sightseeing Hindemith together. And, he was a hell of a musician. And
Oh,
then I think something happened as, that's happened to so many guys. It was, it might have been he got into LSD and something took his mind somewhere else. Because next time I saw him, he was sort of different. I'm still curious. I still wonder what happened to Billy. If anybody knows, by the way, is watching this, you know,
wow.
he was a lovely musician. So he's the only cat I knew, and I knew a guy named Gary Peterson, who was a piano player who went to New England Conservatory, and he plays on the
Peterson.
he plays on the cruise ships now.
Okay.
He plays we're still kind of in touch. He became
Yeah.
a student of Jackie Bar, but I never really went to well, I was in Minnesota once just to judge a college band contest because
Uh-huh.
Mike Brecker couldn't do it, and so he got me the gig over there, and Schnellenberger, a guy named Dave Schnellenberger, I think was his name. We have it wrong, but
Uh-huh.
he was the head of the university program in Duluth,
Duluth.
at
Oh,
the
wow.
University of Duluth
Mm,
and University of Minnesota Duluth. But they had a band, and they were pretty good. They were like a pretty good college band.
wow.
But so anyway, back to you. So you went out to Minnesota, and you played for 5 years. And was there jazz gigs? I mean, you were playing weddings and stuff like that too.
Well, a lot of weddings, a lot of club gigs, kind of like just trying to make a living and trying to figure it out, trying to figure out where's my path going to be, where am I going to go with this? Because it was all kind of new for me, and I was meeting a lot of seasoned veterans that had played for years and years, and I'm going like, well, is this the life that I want? So I took a road gig with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders.
Oh man, I used to go hear them at a place called the Barn
Yeah,
in
right.
Miami on the
Yeah.
79th Street Causeway, and Jocko Pastorius was working with them.
Jocko was in it. Yeah. So I joined that band. I stayed
Were
in
you
it
in
for
that
about,
band with Jocko, or was that a different?
he would come in and sub all the time.
Oh,
Yeah. But I played, and I would go over there in session at Jocko's pad with Ira. And it's funny how
with
it was
Ira.
kind yeah. And it was my first experience kind of on the road, where they had a Christmas tree in the back of the bus, that kind of thing.
What year would that have been?
72 to 77. And
Okay,
then when I
I was
moved
in New
back,
York already. Yeah.
when I moved back to Minneapolis, I said, I'm going to go to New York. That's what I have to do. That was my mindset, is I have to go to New York and I have to play. I have to put myself to a test to see just how far I want to go in this thing. And so I figured that I went out there, I saved what, $5,000 to move out there. And it lasted about 6 months. And then I got a gig with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. So I said, yeah, I'm good. So it was just like a kind of a Cinderella story for me. I
Wow.
never really planned on thinking like, because I knew nobody in New York. I had no friends. I had nobody. I was just like, even at the Vanguard, people were going like, I don't know this guy. Who in the hell is he? So it was great. I I had so much to learn, and I think I put that above anything.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty. That's why we came here. That was the place to learn.
Right,
And
right,
and you learn if you made the mark. If you cut it, New York would teach you. If you really didn't have it, you'd know.
right. Yeah,
One
you'd
way or the
know.
other. And it was coming. It was a truth thing. You'd find out where you were at.
Right.
You
And
know,
so
it's,
that was exactly what I discovered. It was the truth serum that I needed to have at that particular time. And I never would have gotten that anywhere else. I mean, I remember guys were saying, well, you can go out to LA, but I think you'd stand a better chance in learning the depth of what New York is about.
yeah, that was the thing. I mean, I remember when you talk about, Mel and Thad saying, "Can you play?" and can you, this type of test, even just verbal test. When I met Sonny Rollins, I just decided you just have to be brash and young. I had just turned, I was about to turn 20 the next week. I remember that was it. I was not quite 20, and he was at the Vanguard. He hadn't been playing in public for a couple of years. It was like 1972 March,
Oh,
and
Wow.
And so I went down to hear him, and I just decided in between sets he wasn't going to the dressing room right away. He was staying there and saying hello to people. So he sat down on one of those benches, the little banquettes they have at the Vanguard along the wall there,
Right. Yeah.
and I sat down next to him, and I let him talk to everybody, saying hello, and he was really nice. And then finally, I told him I wrote you a letter, which I had done. I said, but I didn't mail it. He said, well, what'd you say? And I said, just how much I admire you. And I also liked one thing you said on the notes of the Coleman Hawkins record. You said,
Oh, that was great. That Coleman Hawkins response.
yeah, yeah, but he says a fine musician can play with anyone, just as a fine human being can get along with anyone.
Right.
And I said, you said that. And then I knew that I should know you because I saw that, what a person of substance you were. And I'm a friend of Ira Sullivan, and he was like, that Ira was like key to that, and
Right.
I've known Ira since I was 13. And then we started to talk. But the next night I came back and we talked some more. And then I asked him if I could study with him. And he said that I don't teach. I said, oh, I understand. He said, but we could play together. We could practice together. But first, I have to ask you something. I said, sure. He said, from the way you talk about music, you must play pretty well. Do you? And I just heard Sonny killing it for 2 nights. And I don't even scratch it. No, I can't play at all. I can't. I don't even scratch. That's what I'm thinking. But I say I can't tell him that I can't play. I mean, I could, you know what I mean? I actually, people had said I was very good at that point. I'd already had a class I was teaching. I mean, Jackie Byard hired me to come play Harvard. I'd had some accolades a little bit. So
Yeah.
I chirped out, yes, I can play. And Sonny's face broke into this huge smile. I'll never forget it. And he said, isn't it nice when you know you're good?
Well, you know how I got my soprano mouthpiece was I was up at, you remember Art Shell Music?
Of course, I know Artie Pincus and Shell. I
Yeah.
knew Charlie Marcus too.
Well, so I was up there and I was going like, Artie, I got to go out with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, and I need a soprano mouthpiece really badly because I'd been to about 7 or 8 stores, Ponte's, Art, a lot of other stores, and so I went, and there was a guy looking at reeds like in the light, you know,
Right.
and Sonny was up there looking at reeds like in this light, like at this, and so I said, "What do you got, Artie, for me?" And he pulled out this old Guy Hawkins blank that he'd worked on in the '60s, and he said, "Well, try this one out. This might work for you." So, and I put it on, and the first thing Sonny Rollins said says, "That's a good mouthpiece, son. That could be your sound someday." And
Uh-huh.
I just because I got that recommendation from Sonny Rollins, I never put on another mouthpiece other than that Guy Hawkins blank that Artie had worked on, and I've played it for the last 47 years.
Wow, you still play? I still have my Selmer D from about
Wow,
40 something years ago too. I've never played a different mouthpiece on soprano than that. And you and I are a lot alike that way because um, I know cats that are constantly changing horns and buying this one and trying that one and doing that. And I'm all for that if you can do that. But I
yes.
had one saxophone that I got when I started, with a $35 Holton from the pawn shop. And
Uh-huh.
then,
Uh,
at a certain point, my dad said, okay, it looks like you're going to be sticking with this one. We'll get you. So I got a Selmer, I got a ballast action, and I had that horn from the time I was 15 until I was, let me see, it was 19, I was 23, and then I was on the road and I was playing in Montreal, and somebody robbed the house I was staying in,
Oh man.
and they took my horns, which were I was sleeping upstairs. It was the one night I didn't take my horns upstairs and put them next to my bed because they had a music room in this house. So I said, well,
Right.
I'm going to be playing in the morning. I got a student coming. I'm going to do that. I'll leave it here. I'll go upstairs to bed. Somebody came in while I was asleep and broke into the house and stole my horn.
Oh, that's
Yes,
tragic. That's where I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to Montreal tomorrow.
really. Were you
I'm going
playing?
to play with I'm going to play with this amazing saxophone player named Remy LaBouffe.
Remy studied with me.
Really?
Yeah. He plays all the stuff.
Oh, such a small world.
He
Well,
does.
he
Yeah,
plays
Remy.
great.
When he was in college, my oldest daughter was born in Montreal. So I taught at Concordia for a year when I got out of New York for a while. And as Paul Blaze had committed professional suicide, but there, I did go to there, and Remy was one of my students there, and he was, he sounded like Phil Woods when he was 18. He was already.
Well, yeah, he went to Manhattan School of Music after that, and he just played his butt off. And now he's writing such amazing music.
Yeah, I can imagine he is. I mean, I know he did a lot of transcriptions of things, and he's very, very, very well schooled,
Yeah,
and nice cat too. I like him too.
yeah, I like him too. I think is he teaching at McGill? He might be teaching out there.
Well, anyway, my horn was stolen, and it took me about 7 or 8 months to find the horn that I have now. And fortunately, I've never had another horn. This is it. So I
That's
got
it.
that horn in 1976.
Wow.
Was when the horn got stolen. And it got stolen February of 1976, and about February, March, April, May, June, around June, I found this horn. So that's 76. I'm going to 86, 96, 2006, 2016. It'll be 50 years in 2 years. So,
Um,
but that's it, and I never, my soprano was also stolen. And I picked that up. Another one of the same kind that's the old cons with the thumb rings.
right, sure.
No, I've never owned a Selmer or a Yamaha or a Yamaha. It's been it for 46 years or whatever it is, too. So we stay with our horns, you and me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that to me, I love the consistency of it. I don't like to switch around. I don't, there's, there might be better mouthpieces or speak differently, but I just like to get the one thing and find my groove on it.
Yeah, well, this is funny. This year, I did decide to abandon my Brillhart for the first time in 30 something years, 35. And this was a whole real search. I mean, I had Ted on the telephone. Which one do you like? He sent me 2 or 3 different things, different ones, and I'm bugging all my friends. I'm making tapes of myself with play along records and buy it myself and say, which one do you like? Don't tell me. I won't tell you which one's what. Like all these kind of things.
Right.
Like, Mike Brecker was funny with that stuff. Like he liked to switch things down a lot. And we would go shopping together, mostly for him. But he would say, okay, Art Shell. We go up to Art Shell too, and
Right.
Artie Pickens would be there. And Mike was like, okay, now turn your back because I don't want you to see which one I'm putting on the horn. And now tell me which one sounds better. And everything he played sounded just like him.
Right.
I couldn't even always tell the difference because they were so close to each other. But
Well, that's the same thing. That's the same thing that I heard from Jerry Bergonzi. He says, "Oh, so what do you think about this mouthpiece?" I said, "Man, Jerry, they all sound great. They all sound like you. What do you you keep coming at me with these questions? I'm going like, you sound like Jerry Bergonzi on every one of them." And
yeah,
that's
what
a
are you trying for? I mean, yeah,
Jeez, just give me a break with that shit.
some
You know,
funny stuff.
you
Well,
sound like incredible. And he would try 3 different mouthpieces at the same time. We'd be on this gig over in Switzerland or something. I'm going like, Jerry, you sound incredible on every mouthpiece you play.
well,
Uh,
people did that. I saw Sonny Rollins come to the gig one night, with I think 3 different mouthpieces, and he kept switching them up. You know, he put one on and then decide to put another one on a different tune. He'd go halfway through one tune, come back after the piano solo with a different solo, with a different mouthpiece on the same song. You know, 3 little words on 2 different mouthpieces,
Yeah, right.
and you know, he would be, you know, but
It's kind of a neuroses in a way, you
it
know.
can be, you know, it
Yeah,
can be.
I'm lucky that I just like I play the same reed that I've had on forever, and unless it, is like totally unresponsive, it's the same one I would use for lead for 3 or 4 weeks or months sometime.
Yeah, and
And
I do that too. When I find a good one, it stays there. I even hate to take it off to clean it because
yeah,
I have a feeling it's gonna change. It's gonna change.
I hate to clean it, you
What's
know.
that?
I hate to clean it.
Yeah, me too. I hate to do even just take it off of the mouthpiece once it's sealing, and it feels
Yeah.
good. So I just stick a little tissue on my finger, put my finger in the mouthpiece, and just
Uh,
get some spit out and keep the reed
yeah,
on.
right, right.
And it's I mean, Jackie McLean one night he was playing and he was like frowning after he played, and he was like, "Man, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have done it." And I was thinking, "What'd you do, rob a bank?" I mean, I'm talking like, I shouldn't have done it. I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I cleaned my mouthpiece right before the concert, and man, it wasn't right. I just couldn't get." He said, "I decided I was going to really clean it out, and I never do that." He said, "But
Yeah,
tonight, for some reason, I decided to clean my mouthpiece off out, and it's the worst I've sounded. I'm sorry you had to hear it." I'm like, "No, that's all right. It was fine." But Jackie was upset that he had actually cleaned his mouthpiece out.
yeah, yeah. It's funny.
And Bobby
Well,
Joe. So go ahead.
uh, I have to get up in the morning pretty early to go to Montreal.
Right. So
I'm trying
we
to
should
think
wrap
of,
this up pretty soon.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
think
trying to
so.
think. I guess we covered a lot. Um,
Is there anything else that we can talk about? We can talk about like
well, alto players. Let's just have a little bit, maybe. I mean, we've had a lot of the same influences, but I mean, let's say if there were, like my main influences besides, I mean, there's always Benny Carter and
mhm,
and Johnny Hodges and those people that, but it's like
right,
Clifford Jordan once said, there are people that um, uh, influence you, and then there are people that affect you, inspire you, but don't necessarily influence you. And
right.
then there are people that actually, influence you. Like
But I get so inspired by like Louis Armstrong. I get so inspired by like uh Vernel Fournier. Uh, I get so inspired by all these drummers, Elvin Jones. Just like I can't, I get inspired by different rhythms, like Cajun rhythms, and I just like I feel that pulse, and it just like it's so like it to me. It's like the gift that keeps on giving that I never realized just how much rhythmic interplay there is in the comp, and to me the love that I just did a solo record, and it was just all me hearing the comp before I heard anything that I was playing on the alto, and I just wanted it. I was sharing it because I was hearing a drummer fill in this, I was hearing a bass player playing this line, I was hearing the piano player, and it was just like to me that's the thing that I keep on hearing more of the comp than I hear myself.
that's interesting because that's what Sonny Rollins told me once too. He said you have to be an orchestra. in
Right.
yourself. He said, you have to be the rhythm section. You're the pianist, the bassist, and the drummer when you play. Now, when you play with piano, bass, and drums, you're listening to them too, but it's got to
Yeah.
be complete within yourself. And he said, if you can be a complete orchestra within yourself, then rhythm sections will love you.
Right. Right. So like, you have such an amazing concept with playing on changes, and also you hear the melody in such a Bob Mover way.
Well,
And
thank
so
you.
like I would love to see somebody of your caliber really do a solo record to enlighten us all on this is the melodies that I endear and I love and I hope to expand on. But this is what I've done in my career. This is what this is something that I think is invaluable for uh, people of your caliber to enlighten our young
Well,
students.
thank you, man. I mean, you too. I can't. Now you mentioned, I got excited. I get inspired just hearing that you made a solo record. What label is it on? Is it coming out? Tell me more about
Oh,
that.
it's the B's uh, a BCMD label on at Temple University. And it's just a solo record. I went in there just, let's see how this works. And so I
What?
would like play, just this, all the standards that I know you love and that I love and that we grew up with
Yeah,
in New York. And it's just like I wanted to document that so I could show you how my best teacher that, has been that alone has been my best, the melody, learning how to play off the melody, learning how to play in between the melody, learning how to fill with the drummer. It's just, I kept learning from it
yeah, that's a beautiful
over and over.
concept. I've been having a good time with some of my. Grant Stewart has sent me like these. He's got a little music school down in Tribeca, and Grant was one of my prize pupils.
Oh,
And
he's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I kidnapped him when he was 17 years old in Toronto. I just kidnapped him, and he didn't go to school for a week and just hung out at my house, and I put him in my band. But he's now teaching all these young cats. So I've got these guys. They go to Juilliard in Manhattan, but they go to study with him, and then he
Thank
throws,
God. Thank God he's the answer.
yeah, and then he throws them over to me, because I was his teacher, sort of.
Right, sure.
And but I've been having a ball with just playing these duets. I just, as a matter of fact, one of the kids that came over last Sunday, I made a little recording because I do that on my little phone, and we played a version of just one of those things, just the two of us. That I've been enjoying. You and I should do that maybe sometime. Maybe we could release it on your college label. You should come over. We could play duets
Yeah,
and
that'd be good.
get
That'd be
some recording.
fantastic.
I think it was just that might be an idea, man. We should do
Try
that.
to think about more like how to come together with doing something together like that. That would be great.
Yeah, we just pick some tunes.
Yeah,
Whatever we're feeling that day, or we might think in advance of a couple of things we want to do.
right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and yeah, we should. Why don't we think about doing that at some point?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm down, especially.
Yeah, we'll talk about it because I think I have something. I can get some microphones that are portable and they record very well, and that might be something to do.
Okay. Because I
Yeah.
know the studio down there that would take us in a second. So
Where is it?
it's at on the Temple campus.
Oh,
Yeah.
see,
And
I
it's
have trouble traveling because I'm not supposed to. Uh, this emphysema. I told you I got this operation, and this is
oh
a
yeah.
tracheostomy, and I can't. So,
Well,
but we can record in my living. My living room's got beautiful sound,
that's good. That's good for me too.
you know. So if you
Well,
could,
thank you.
let's talk about that. But anyway, I think we pretty much. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we could talk all night about various things. We just start talking about the cats we know, and I'm sure we've got a million funny stories about a lot of these people. But
Well, I gotta say, my biggest educational experience has been staying with the band for as long as I have because I've learned so much from like Joe Lovano, Gary Smulyan, uh, all the cats that have played in the band, Steve Coleman, Ted Nash, so many great musicians have played in the band, and Earl Gardner especially. Some people will say, "Well, how did you learn how to play lead alto?" Well, I just listened to Mel Lewis, and I just listened to Earl Gardner, and they taught me all the
the
shit
lead
that.
trumpet play, you mean the lead Earl's the lead first trumpet, right?
Right.
So you
He
listen to
was.
the first trumpet and the drummer, and then you play in between.
That's it. I just followed those big arms. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Mr. Dick Oatts.
Yeah. Bob Mover.
Oh, one other thing. I heard you with these kids from Spain. That's just talking about jazz education. This man, if you talk to him, Mr. Camaro, uh,
Joan
Joan,
tomorrow. Yeah.
Joan Camaro,
Yeah.
he's really got it right, this guy.
He's got that balance right. These kids are amazing and they sing and they play great and they feel great time. It's just it's like
Yeah,
the
I heard you with that. It's beautiful.
perfect world.
Yeah,
Yeah. For me, it's like there's such a gift over there.
yeah. I mean, mostly I'm sick of traveling, and I mean, I miss playing with the cats, but I can play at my house. Guys come over here and play. But especially in today's world, traveling is such a hassle a lot of the time.
I know.
But when I
I've
heard
slowed
you
down.
with those guys, I got jealous. I
I've
said, man,
slowed
I
down
wish I
too.
could get on a plane and play with those guys. But
Yeah. All right, Bob.
yeah, anyway, have a great trip to Montreal.
Thanks, man. I'll say hello to the cats up there for you.
And we thank Dick for joining us. And I thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, Jesse, thank you so much for your help.
I want to thank Jesse Kaiser as well for helping
All
us.
right, Bob, all my love, man, and continued I'm just such a fan of you.
I'm
So,
a fan of yours, man. So,
all right.
let's, as they say, don't be a stranger.
Okay, we won't be.
Great. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you next time at On the Real Side.
All right. All right, Bob.
Subscribe. Oh,
See you, Jesse.
the other thing, don't feel bad. Don't
Okay.
feel free. Anybody that's watching, give us a like because it really helps us to uh, to have those likes and the subscriptions. Doesn't cost you
Yeah.
anything. Thanks again. Thanks, Dick. Thanks,
Thanks,
Jesse.
man.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Good night. God bless.